Um, I would say yes. The first poem I can remember was second grade, and it was a poem that I gave to my teacher. And I pretty much thought of myself as someone who writes poetry ever since then. That's a good question. I liked the challenge of a poem to say a lot in a small space. I would say mainly my mom did. Both my parents are great readers, and we always had books everywhere in our house, and so they modeled reading for me. But as far as writing, I can remember my mom writing down little stories I would tell, and just being a reader who was always there throughout my childhood. And she was the one I would bring something I wrote to first. It was. Having an audience is very important. I journal and I write for myself as well, but to see somebody connecting with my writing it's very important. Yes. When I first start writing, I think of myself as my reader. I'm writing to work something out for myself, to make meaning of an experience or of an emotion I'm carrying around that's nagging at me. But beyond that, I write for somebody else who's a good listener, I think, and somebody who I would want somebody who would read my poems and say, yes, that's how it is. I feel that, and by that way my poem is connecting with somebody else. No, I don't think of my poem as doing that so much, as not changing opinions so much, but as taking somebody from one place to another. Maybe changing the experience of an emotion, or seeing something in a different way. I suppose that could be considered changing an opinion, but I'm not really out to, in a political way, I'm not out to change opinions. Mm-hmm. I would say it's more in relationships, whether it be a relationship with a significant other, or a family member, or something observed and how the speaker's relating to whoever it is that's observed, relationship to nature. So I'm interested in that interchange of ourselves and the world. I tend to feel an idea sort of living inside me for a while before I sit down to even write it. I find that I do a lot of writing in my head, so by the time something gets to paper, I've sort of lived with whatever it is, maybe even for a month or two. A lot of it does from my childhood and my relationships with family as a child. And then I also have an interest in fiction. I write short stories, and I'm starting a novel. It's scary to say that because nothing might become of it. But so there's a strong storytelling component to quite a few of my poems, and even with my lyric poetry, a fiction might take over in the way that in the way that it works with memoir. Here and there, really. I have a 3-year-old son now, and I need to fit my writing around him as well, and I work part-time as an editor. I'm not one of those writers who has a regular schedule, you know, get up at 5 and write for an hour and a half or two. So I tend to write when I can find the time and make the time. I'm fortunate to live with another writer. My partner is a poet as well, so he understands the value of giving each other time, and we schedule that for each other. I am a great admirer of Philip Larkin, so I feel that's a great compliment to my work. If someone had compared me to a writer who I don't particularly see an influence from, then I might feel a little more strange. But I love formal poetry. I write formal poetry, and Philip Larkin's definitely along those lines. I studied with Molly Peacock when I was getting my Master of Fine Arts in Writing, and I still hear her voice speaking to me, and I admire her work and also her example of being a writer and being a teacher. I used to teach high school English, and she taught children as well back in the past, and she's a mentor now, and she's a great example for me, and she really pushed me. I can remember I wanted to write a sonnet sequence, but I told her, oh, I'm going to do this, you know, sometime, but not now. And she said, why on earth not now? And any time now where I feel like some resistance to a project I want to do, I'll hear her voice saying that. And I did write the sonnet sequence, and it became the centerpiece of my book. I do, by the time, like I said, because I write so much in my head first, by the time it gets onto paper, it's almost there often. But I'm a perfectionist, and I will go back over things and rewrite, yes. And I'm in a writing group. That's a great audience for my work in process, and the critique and feedback I get from that is very useful. I spent some time in Japan. I was an exchange student there, and years ago, and read works of women writers there. Lately, I haven't been reading so much from writers of other cultures. I would tell them to associate themselves with other like-minded people who also want to write and who do write, and to read extensively and determine who their favorite authors are and read everything by those authors, and read not just to enjoy the work but also with an eye for how did they do this, how did they put this poem together, or how did this story come about, with an eye for the craft.